reminding me to record this, Blake. Thank you. Thank you.
No
Thank you. Thank
problem.
you. All right. All right. Got it. All right. So, to repeat what I said, consciousness is really hard. It's really hard to define. And basically, we sort of generally define it as our awareness of internal and external stimuli. Okay. Just kind of, what's going on. Uh, that's not a very good definition, but that's the best we can do right now. Now, when we're talking about consciousness, usually in these classes, when we're talking about consciousness, what this is the introduction to sleep, not to go to sleep. I'm not asking you people to go to sleep. Please don't do that. But some of you, even though some of you are chilling out in bed, right? So it looks like some of you are actually in bed, right? Okay, well, that's so. I should lecture from bed. I can actually do that, right? I should do that. Anyway. Uh, um, so the first part of this chapter is really talking about sleep. Sleep is like the biggest change in consciousness that we all experience every day, right? I mean, we have two big categories of activity, right? Two-thirds of the day we are awake, and then roughly one-third of the day we are asleep. Um,
No.
sl- Sleep is related to what are called our circadian rhythms, CIRCADIAN, circadian rhythms. Okay, circadian rhythms are the natural day-to-day operations. Whoops, got a message from my boss here. I should have turned off my messages from work. Okay, let me do that real quick. Leave me alone, lady. All right, let's see. There we go. Okay. Um, there you go. What circadian rhythms are? Circadian rhythms are the bodily rhythms that we experience every day as a result of the operation of all of the systems of our body. You have circadian rhythms that maintain your body temperature. For example, at night your body temperature goes down a little bit. You ever notice sometimes when you go to bed you're not covered, and then you kind of wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and you're cold, so you pull a blanket over yourself. I do that all the time. The circadian rhythms govern our hormone releases. So, men, for example, young men in particular, testosterone gets released at night when you're asleep, and that's governed on a circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm also governs our sleep-wake cycles. So they govern when we're awake, and then they govern when we go to sleep. Um, Blood pressure, blood sugar, insulin, all of these basic bodily functions are regulated on a daily circadian rhythm. Now, the reason this is important is, well, one of the reasons this is important is when these things break, or more specifically, when we try to go against our circadian rhythms. Have any of you ever worked a night job, like from 11 to 7 at night? Blaine, have you worked a night job? So, selling drugs or pimping or no? Okay.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay. Yeah, so in terms of think about that. So I remember when I was in college, I worked at Kmart, which doesn't exist anymore here in Texas, but I worked at the Kmart store in Austin on the corner of William Cannon and I-35. And the last summer I worked there, before I left to go to graduate school, the last summer I worked there, I had a night job. I would come in at 10 o'clock at night after the store closed and stock shelves basically until 7 o'clock in the morning. And I got to tell you, that killed me. It was rough. I mean, it was really, really rough. It takes a long time for your body to adjust to that schedule. What's even worse is when people, there's some unfortunate people that have to actually, have that schedule for a while, and then they go to like a normal schedule, and they go back, and they're shifting like once a month. That is absolutely detrimental to your body. That causes a lot of stress that can make you very sick. Um, Daylight savings time. Do any of you feel a little wonky that first week of daylight savings time, especially when we have to lose the hour? When we spring forward, you ever feel a little bit off that week? A lot of people do. I do. And I think that one of the reasons for that is because your circadian rhythms are adjusted to the clock, right? We're in America, we're very much tied to the clock. And but when that hour changes, when you spring forward or when you fall back, it takes for some people it takes a week or two to readjust. As a matter of fact, accidents like industrial accidents, like in factories, the number of accidents always goes up slightly when daylight savings time happens. They always go up slightly. So people's attention is just a little bit off because their circadian rhythms are not quite in rhythm with the clock that's basically operating. The reason circadian rhythms exist, the reason we have these rhythms that are maintaining our body, is to maintain something called homeostasis, HOMEO, homeo, and stasis, STASIS. And what homeostasis is, it is just basically the processes that keep our body operating within normal operating parameters. It's the processes that keep our body operating within optimal normal parameters. So we have homeostatic mechanisms to make sure our blood sugar is okay, to make sure we have plenty of water, to make sure we pee and poop when we need to make sure that to make sure that we get enough sleep. We have all of these homeostatic mechanisms. So for example, whenever you experience not enough, whenever you don't have enough water, um, your mouth gets dry and you start getting thirsty, right? That's because the homeostatic mechanism is saying, oh, okay, this guy has his water concentration in his blood has fallen to a certain level. I'm going to make him thirsty, so that then he can get up and go and get a drink of water. Um, Similarly with hunger, right? Your blood sugar goes down, your stomach is empty, and that, among other things, stimulates the hunger uh, that causes you to go out and seek food, right? But all of those different mechanisms for maintaining a normal balance are for homeostasis, for basically maintaining the proper functions of our body. Um, believe it or not, we actually have a clock in our brain. We have a clock in our brain that is ticking away and keeping track of the time. It's mentioned on page 113 in your textbook, and it's a long word. It's abbreviated SCN, Sierra Charlie November. But the name of the structure in your brain is the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The suprachiasmatic nucleus. Let me see if I can show you a picture of it real quick. Suprachiasmatic nucleus.
Wait, one second.
The spider helped me to put this on my finger. The spider helped me to put this on. Look it.
Cool.
That was cute. Okay, let's see. So, let's see. Let me find a nice picture of the SCN inside your head. Let's see. How about that one? I guess this will do. Let me pop that one up real quick. And let me make this a little bigger. And let me share my screen. Share screen. And basic. And desktop. And share. So there's my screen, and there's the brain. Okay, so here's this is a half chopped brain, right? So basically, if I took my brain, cut it right down the middle like this, and then took one half and then showed you the inside of it, this is a cartoon version of that, right? So the forehead is here, top of your head is here, the back of your head is here. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is this little bundle, this little dot right here. It's a bundle of neurons, and they sit right on top of the optic nerve. The suprachiasmatic nucleus sits right on top of the optic nerve. Now, the optic nerve is the nerve that transmits information from your eyeballs to your brain. So this thing is sitting right on top of your eyes, which allows it to detect changes in daytime and nighttime. And so the suprachiasmatic nucleus actually is a clock that is tuned to the rising and setting of the sun. And your body uses that to coordinate all of its mechanisms. One of the biggest examples of when you're suprachiasmatic, or when your circadian rhythms are messed up, is called jet lag. Jet lag is what you experience when you travel from one place far away to another place, that has in a completely different time zone, right? So I used to have to go to Australia all the time for work. I would go to either Melbourne or Sydney, and so flying there, and when you get there, it's not so bad. You don't feel so bad. You're a little off, right? But you don't feel so bad. The worst is when you're coming back after you've been over there a week or so, and then you're flying back. And when I get home, man, I am completely messed up. I mean, sometimes I don't even know if it's morning or evening. You're outside driving, and you're like, it could be evening, but it could be morning too. I don't know. And that's because your circadian rhythms are messed up because of the time change, right? The sun is coming up and down at different times relative to what your body thinks it should be doing. Let's see. So that's the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Now, the one of the things that gets released to help you sleep is a hormone called melatonin. The pineal gland. The pineal gland is actually right. It's actually chopped off, but it would be right here. Would be right there. That's where the pineal gland is, and it's a little tiny gland that controls the release of all of your hormones. And the pineal gland actually is the one that is responsible uh, for releasing melatonin. Melaton. Melatonin is a hormone that helps you sleep. You can go to you can go to a pharmacy, or like a GNC store, and you can actually buy bottles of melatonin to take to help you sleep. It doesn't work all that well, but some people think it does, right? Um, how many? Let me ask you guys a question. So, oh, I should have put a poll together. Actually, I wonder if I can do that real quick. Let's see. Let me close that, and let me go to, oh, poo. Where's that? Settings. Okay, screw this. It's not gonna let me. I'm sorry. And let me ask you guys something. How many of you get 7 or less hours of sleep a day on average? Kathleen, Carla, okay. Elia, you too? So say 7 hours or less. Okay, so Carla Muskis, let me ask you something. Yeah, you have to unmute your mic. So why do you only get like 7 or less hours of sleep a day?
It depends. Either like school or work or stress doesn't let me sleep. One or the other.
Yeah. So you got a lot going on.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on. Okay. All right. Fair enough. How about Elia? Why do you only get 7 or less hours of sleep a day?
Pretty much the same thing. It's just adding working out to it.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you guys something. How many of you get 10 or more hours of sleep a day? Gila's like right here. Now, Gila, let me ask you something. Okay, so first of all, congratulations. That's that's awesome. But so tell me, is sleep important to you? Oh, you're mute. There we go. Is sleep important to you? I can't hear you.
Yes. Can you hear
Oh, there
me?
you are. There you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think. So I guess I'm guessing you don't have a lot of the types of stressors that Elia and Carla have to deal with in terms of lots of work and school and stuff like that.
I mean, I do work, but it's only a part-time job,
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
and
Yeah.
and then I'm also a full-time student.
Yeah. 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 Well, see,
So,
that's
like,
not bad. That's not bad at all. Yeah. Actually, so the reason I ask is because one of the biggest problems in this country right now is sleep deprivation. Actually, a lot of people are sleep deprived, and it is an extremely unhealthy thing to do. It leads to heart disease, high blood pressure, weight gain. I mean, sleep deprivation is a serious health problem. Uh, I tend to get about 8 hours a day. I go to bed pretty early and I get up pretty early, and I'm about 8 hours a day. I personally love to sleep. I mean, for me it's a very pleasurable experience. I love to sleep. For me, it's right up there with sex and eating, chicken wings and beer. I mean, I really love it a lot. Some people do. Some people really enjoy sleeping, and I do. Every chance I get, I lay down and take a nap if I can. But I don't get to do that much. But sleep is a very pleasurable thing. You guys should be getting 7 to 9 hours a day on average. So if you're getting about around 8 hours plus or minus one, that's not bad. That's okay. The older you get, the less sleep you're going to need. That's in general. That's true. I know that's been true for my case. I used to be like Gila. I would sleep, 10 or 12 hours a day with no problem at all. But now, now I just don't. Um, but nonetheless, one of the things that happens to you if you don't get enough sleep is you incur what's called a sleep debt. A sleep debt. If you go a long time without sleeping, if you go a long time without sleeping, one of the things that happen is eventually it's going to catch up to you and you're going to end up just crashed uh, and sleeping for a very long time. We have to sleep. And if you miss a lot of sleep, you're going to end up having to pay all of that back. And we see this a lot with students. I know my kids do this, right? So during school they'll be getting up at well, back when we used to drive to school, we don't anymore, but but you get up at 6 in the morning, right, to get ready to go to school, which is really fucking early, right? You go to school, come home, you got to do homework, a bunch of fucking homework, and then you're not done till like 10 or 11, and you go to sleep, sleep 5 or 6 hours, and then of course, and then what do my kids do on Saturday? Right? They'll go to bed like at 10 o'clock at Friday night and get up like at 1 in the afternoon on Saturday, right? They're sleeping like 12 or 13 hours. And again, that's because of the sleep debt, right? They're paying back all that sleep that they missed during the week. So, what is sleep? One of the mistakes that a lot of people make is that they think that since you're just laying there, right? Since you're just laying there, right? A lot of people think that sleep is like there's not a lot going on, particularly in your brain, and nothing could be further from the truth. Your brain is extremely active during sleep, extremely active. It has a lot of activities that it's engaged in, and there are specific stages of sleep that um, uh, that uh, uh, that you go through every night when you go to sleep. And of course, while you're asleep, your multiple areas of your brain are doing something. We don't know exactly what, but multiple areas of your brain are working. Um, the biological clock is keeping track of time. You're also releasing hormones at night, all kinds of, not just melatonin, but the sex hormones, thyroid, lots of different hormones are released while you sleep. Let's see, one of the ways that we know, one of the ways that we know what happens when you sleep is through the recording of what are called electroencephalograms. Let me just show you a picture here real quick. It's abbreviated EEG. You can just abbreviate it EEG.
Sir,
See. Yo.
this is a weird question. Would you
No.
say that I guess your brain is more active if you're dreaming or no?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That is in fact when your brain is the most active, is during stages when you're dreaming. Absolutely. We're going to talk about that actually. Um, One of the ways that we have studied uh, the times when you're dreaming, as well as all the other times, is through the use of here it is right here, the electroencephalogram. And basically what I can do is, if I want, I can I can put this, let me find the picture. Let me find a picture of an EEG. So here we go. So this is kind of a cartoon drawing of this dude getting an EEG. I don't know if you can see that, but basically what they do is they put like this, like this hat on your head, like a tight hat. And inside this hat are all these little electrodes, like dozens of these little electrodes. And remember how we talked about how the brain works through electrochemistry, positive and negative ions? Well, those positive and negative ions, when they're flowing around in the neurons, they make a lot of noise. They give off signals, and those signals are picked up by these electrodes in the EEG hat. And then when you look at them, when you look at the patterns that you see on an EEG, oops, let me see. Let me go back to the picture and go to images. You get something that looks like this, right? These are the electrical patterns that you see on a typical EEG. These are all the different types of signals that you can see. These are all associated with different states. As you go to sleep, your brain passes through all of these different stages. And each one of those stages is marked by different EEG patterns that are showing up on the screen. Let's see.
Is there a pattern for a nightmare, or like is it not like that? Is it more?
Yeah, usually when you are, let me see. Oh yeah, yeah. Usually when you're having a dream like that, like a nightmare, really any type of like detailed dream, you're in the deepest level of sleep, which is you've probably heard the term REM sleep, REM. There was a band from the 80s called REM. But REM stands for rapid eye movements.
Oh yeah, that I've heard of.
Yeah, yeah. When you're asleep and you're in the deepest level of sleep, what you're doing is your eyes are, one of the things that's happening is your eyes are darting around underneath your eyelids. How many of you have seen cats or dogs when they're sleeping and they're like twitching, like they're running? They're actually dreaming, right? And that's when they're in their deepest stage of REM sleep. Um, but again, one of the ways that we study sleep is by putting one of these like ugly electrode helmets on people's heads, turning on the machine and letting it record all of the different patterns as they sleep, as they go through different stages. One of the, one of the questions I've always personally had is, why do we sleep? What is the purpose of sleep? Um, you know, if you think about it, it's kind of like it's kind of a waste of time, right? I mean, we spend a third of our lives asleep, one third of our lives asleep. Some of the theories have been that we need to sleep in order to restore our bodies, right? So it's an evolutionary adaptation so that we can restore our bodies, but there's not a lot of support for that because there's easier ways to restore your body than just blowing 8 hours a day. And there's not really a relationship between sleep and any sort of restorative thing. Another theory has been that we developed sleep since we evolved sleep to help us hide from predators, right? So back when we were little tiny mammals living among the dying dinosaurs, at nighttime we would like find a little hole and curl up and go to sleep. That way we would be safe, and somebody wouldn't come along and eat us if we were out running around. So that was another theory, which like, it's like that's not such a great theory because um, if you miss sleep, if you don't sleep, it has negative consequences. I mean, you are less, way less functional cognitively, emotionally. Missing sleep. I mean, let me ask you guys: how many of you have stayed up all night before and then like gone on the next day? And don't you feel just absolutely shitty? The next day you feel like crap. I mean, it's horrible. You get through it, right? You power through it, but man, it is a, you got that headache and you're just like, oh, I want to go to sleep. um, so we know we need sleep. We have to sleep because when we don't get it, we get our mental function just declines immensely. There was a plane, there was a cargo jet that crashed, I think in the early 2000s in Gitmo, in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. And it was a big cargo jet that had a lot of expensive submarine parts on it. And this jet was trying to land at the airport at Guantanamo Bay, and they flew out of Virginia and they went down to Guantanamo Bay, and they crashed because the pilot got disoriented and missed the runway, and they crashed. And the cause of that particular airliner accident was lack of sleep. The captain and the entire crew had basically only slept like 4 hours in the last. I think I think they only slept like 5 hours in the last 3 days or something like that. Some stupid amount of sleep, and they weren't performing up to their ability. As a matter of fact, a lot of accidents are due to lack of sleep. We really need sleep. From a cognitive perspective, it's important for us to uh, sleep is important for us to help with learning and memory, in particular. Um, my personal, you know, my personal favorite theory about sleep, well, about sleep and dreaming, I guess, is one of the things that's going on when you're dreaming is that your body, or your brain, I should say, is helping to prepare you for dangerous or stressful events. Your brain is kind of like going through and practicing stressful or dangerous events. So um, that doesn't really explain why sometimes dreams are really weird, right? But the fact of the matter is, I think that's part of why we dream, is actually to help us to, help our brains, rehearse, all of these different types of scenarios, and enabling it to, respond better later on. So let's talk a little bit about the stages of sleep. Um, let me show you the famous diagram here of the stages of sleep. And let me do images, and let's see. It's got to have a diagram with the maybe this one. Let's see what this one does. poo. Let's see, close you. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right, so this is a diagram showing you the different stages of sleep. There are four, and the brain waves that are associated with each one. Okay. So the first stage of sleep is known as by the complicated name stage one.
Can you use your headphones?
Hello? Did somebody say something? Oops, is somebody asking a question? Nope, I guess not. Okay. Anyway, so stage one sleep. This is what happens when you close your eyes and relax, right? When you close your eyes and relax, and you start going into you start beginning into sleep. At this stage, you're still kind of awake, right? But you might have some weird sort of hypnotic hallucinations, like if you've been if you've been playing a video game like all day long, you might still see images of that video game. If somebody calls your name, you might respond to it. You probably will. This is also the time when you ever been laying there and all of a sudden you have that experience that you're falling and you jerk awake. You ever had that happen to you before? That's when this happens, is during stage one, right? So if you're all comfy in bed and you've got your eyes closed and all the lights are out, you then pass into stage two. Now, stage two is a deeper level of sleep. Notice how the brain waves are getting a little bit slower. One of the things that you see is this appearance of these little like that. These are called sleep spindles. These crop up during stage two sleep. And you also see this all of a sudden, this dip, this spike and this dip. And these spikes and dips are called K complexes. You see a lot of those during stage two sleep. And that's the next level of sleep, right? You're still not dreaming yet. At this stage, your body's transitioning over. This is stage two sleep is when you start snoring and breathing, fairly heavily. Then after a while, you go through stage three sleep. Okay. One of the big differences in stage three sleep between stage two sleep is how big and long those waves are. They're called delta waves. So whenever you see the brain waves switch from this to this, you know that the person is going through stage three sleep, which is a very deep level of sleep. It's harder to wake you up from it, but you're not dreaming yet. And people vary in how long it takes them to go from here to here. On average, it takes about most people maybe 45 minutes to pass through these stages, roughly. Some people can go from stage one to stage to the bottom immediately. Just depends on how tired you are, I guess. And then after you've been in stage three sleep for a while, after you've been in that sleep, then you go into the most bizarre, interesting part of sleep. You go into what's called REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movements. And the reason they call it that is because at that time, all of a sudden what's happening is that your eyes start moving underneath the eyelids, like you're looking at stuff that's moving real fast. The EEG pattern that you see is like these little quick, low amplitude waves. These look a lot like the same waves that happen when you're awake. This is very similar to your waking pattern, but you are dead asleep. This is the point at which you start dreaming. This is when dreams begin to happen. The really bizarre, weird dreams, especially, happen during REM sleep. It's very difficult to wake humans from REM sleep. Humans, once they hit REM sleep, it takes a little while to wake up. You're hitting the snooze button like 27 times before you get up, right? But other animals, they have slightly different patterns. For example, cats. You know how cats sleep a lot. Cats are able to go from here to REM sleep and then to pop out of REM sleep and go back out very quickly. They're able to do that very quickly because they're predators, and they have to kind of like wake up whenever they hear something they want to eat, right? Um, the let's see what else. Now, one of the things that I mentioned to you before was this notion of sleep debt. Remember, I said if you miss out on a lot of sleep, you have to pay it back. Well, the specific type of sleep that we're talking about here is REM sleep. That's the deep sleep that you want to be sure you get. As a matter of fact, they've done lots of experiments where they have hooked up people to an EEG, and they have watched them go to sleep, and then as soon as they exit stage 3 to go into REM sleep, they wake them up. They wake them up. And so they don't ever let them enter REM sleep. And those people, they're just miserable. They're basically suffering from severe sleep deprivation because they don't get REM sleep. Um, I think, and what happens after a while, if you miss out on a lot of REM sleep, you're going to go through these stages very quickly because your brain wants to get to REM sleep as soon as possible. I mean, there's people that, if they're very sleep deprived, they will lay down and they will, like, within a minute just go right into REM sleep because they're so sleep deprived. Um, the other thing is that, well, one example of being sleep deprived that's pretty common actually is a condition called sleep apnea. I don't know if you guys have ever heard sleep apnea before, but basically it's a condition where whenever you're falling asleep and your neck and your jaw muscles relax and your tongue relaxes, your airway is blocked. So what happens is you choke and then you wake up. And so you can, it's real hard for people with sleep apnea to sleep because or to get good REM sleep. A lot of them don't. Like I have sleep apnea and I had it real bad. And what I do is I wear like a mouthpiece that pulls my jaw forward like this, and it opens up my back airway so that I can breathe and I can sleep. But before that, I mean, I was miserable. And I remember the first month that I was wearing that mouthpiece, I was having the weirdest dreams like that whole month because my brain was catching up on the sleep debt, making sure that I had enough sleep. It takes roughly 90 minutes, 90, to go all the way from the beginning of stage 1 to the end of REM sleep. And we usually go through 2 or 3 of these cycles a night, right? So you'll go through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 REM, and then you'll go back up to maybe stage 1.5 or so, 1.5 or 2, and then you go back through 3, and then you hit REM again, and then you pop out of REM and go to stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Some of you may have noticed this, that you may wake up in the middle of the night. And this is very common. It happens. You wake up in the middle of the night, you readjust your blanket, you flip your pillow over to the cold side. And me, I have to get up and pee because I'm an old man and I have to, pee all the time. I get up and go pee, and then I go back to sleep and hopefully, fall back into REM sleep. Now, if you're really busy, and like you can't, you just don't have time to sleep, right? You might want to ask yourself, like, what is the minimum amount of sleep that I would need to be semi-functional, right? And the answer to that question is about 3 hours. Okay, 3 hours is enough time to pass through all these stages at least once successfully. Okay, so if you're trying to, like, if you're crunched for time and it's finals time or whatever, and you're trying to figure out what's the minimum amount so you can get away for a little while, do at least 3 hours, because that'll allow you to go through at least 1 or 2 REM cycles, and you'll get a little bit of rest, right? Um, Dreams are something that has vexed people for centuries. Obviously, um, authors and poets have written about dreams. One of the first pseudo kind of scientific analysis of dreams was done, of course, by Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, he one of the things that made him super famous was his interpretation of dreams. And to this day, you can find websites that will uh, tell you what certain dreams mean, right? So if you could go to dream meanings and dream. Here's a dream dictionary. Uh, Here's different symbols. So here's dreams about being naked. Nudity indicates vulnerability. So it symbolizes vulnerability. Nudity indicates fear of exposure. Dreaming of yourself nude indicates insecurity, being unprepared, arrogance, freedom of expression, right? So basically, it has to do with you feeling vulnerable somehow, according to these people. If you have a dream about, let's see, oh yeah, one of the dreams that I've had every now and then is like my teeth are all breaking and falling out, right? I have that dream sometimes, and usually for me, my interpretation is that it relates to powerlessness. Like I don't feel like I'm in charge of the world or whatever. Here's all these different symbols. So let's look at symbols starting with A. You can dream if you've ever dreamt about aardvarks before. Aardvark in your dream indicates that you are being very secretive and cautious about your business. So watch out for aardvarks in your dream. Abortion. Oh, dreaming of Abraham Lincoln refers to your solid character and leadership ability. Oh, see, there you go. Right. But all of these different, so-called symbols, right? Are what Sigmund Freud talked about. Now, Sigmund Freud put a lot of stock in dreams. He thought that dreams were a view into the unconscious. He thought that dreams were the unconscious part of your mind trying to express itself. And so he came up with this notion of dream symbolism, of analyzing dreams. And he came up with 2 types of content. He came up with the manifest content of a dream, manifest, and the latent content of a dream. The manifest content was like what the dream was about, right? It's like what you actually saw. So you'd say, I dreamt that I was a giant wiener and I was trying to squeeze into the hole of a donut. Okay, that's the manifest content, right? And then the latent content is what that dream represents, right? What the dream represents. So Dr. Freud would listen to that dream of me being a wiener trying to squeeze into the hole of a donut. And he'd say, oh yes, Mr. Lopez, you obviously you are obviously having homosexual tendencies. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks, or whatever, right? But that's what that's the whole idea behind manifest and latent content of dreams, right? Let's see. Talked about sleep apnea, narcolepsy. Let's see. I've mentioned some of the sleep disorders already, right? One of the most common sleep disorders is insomnia. Not being able to sleep. It looks like Gila's falling asleep. She's yawning, so gotta get that 12 hours in. Yeah, I'm tired too. But insomnia, right? The inability to fall asleep. There's a lot of causes for insomnia, right? Stress is a big one. Stress is a huge one, actually. Also, like caffeine abuse. I had a friend of mine who was an EMT, emergency medical technician, and she worked in Austin. And this was like 25 years ago. But she said that they got a call. Some guy called the EMS because he couldn't sleep. And it was like 2 in the morning. So and so the ambulance rushes over there. They knock on the door, and he opens the door, and he's holding a big Starbucks mug of coffee. And he's wondering why he can't sleep. So he got into trouble for that, but they also told him, like, lay off the coffee, because obviously that's going to keep, coffee has caffeine in it. Caffeine is a stimulant, and that's going to keep you awake, right? There's let's see. Oh, a rather serious disorder related to sleep is called narcolepsy. Narcolepsy, and this is where a person can't resist falling asleep, cannot resist falling asleep. So they'll be there, like, during the day, right? And then all of a sudden they will literally just, like this, just fall into sleep. And people that have narcolepsy really badly, where they will literally just completely go limp and fall down. Sometimes they have to wear like little crash helmets when they're in the house. They have to wear like a helmet because they might be like walking around, then all of a sudden they go to sleep, and that they don't want to hit their head on something when they're going down, right? um, but the causes of narcolepsy, we're not sure. Obviously, it has something to do with the sleep regulation mechanisms of the brain, but we're not exactly sure what causes narcolepsy. But uh, there's a lot of different causes, a lot of different treatments for it. So, any questions on sleep? Any questions about sleep, on sleep? You want to go to sleep? I do.
Um, I just had a question, but dang it, it slipped my mind. Oh, right. Um, is it really true that like naps can like screw over your whole SDC or whatever it was called, or like
Uh,
mess up your whole sleep schedule? Like I remember reading that somewhere that like if you take a long enough power nap or like in
oh,
a
naps. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you take too many, if you take too many, it's gonna really, it will mess up your sleep schedule quite a lot. But short naps, uh, naps of about 30 minutes during the day are actually good for you. They're actually really good for your health. They help you feel replenished. But yeah, if you anything more than that, if you're like sleeping 2 or 3 hours a day, yeah, it's gonna definitely mess up your sleep rhythms for sure. So now sleep is like the natural way that our consciousness changes every day, right? We go through this cycle every day. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn our attention to unnatural ways that we change our consciousness, and that is usually through the use of drugs. So we're going to talk about different drugs. One of the first topics that comes up when you talk about drugs is basically substance use disorders, right? Substance use disorders. Obviously, a big problem. We just finished going through, well, actually, we're still in it, I guess, the opiate crisis. How many of you guys have heard of the opioid crisis, where, um, you know, there are just millions of these addictive painkillers that are on the market right now. And for a while, they were overprescribed, like to a huge extent. Most people blame the pharmaceutical companies for that, which I'm totally in agreement with. I think it was their fault because they were selling these drugs to doctors, and doctors prescribed these painkillers, highly addictive painkillers, and as a result, a lot of people got addicted to opioid drugs. Um, when we talk about addiction, There's generally two types of dependence that we talk about, right? There's physical dependence on a drug, and there's psychological dependence on a drug. If you're physically dependent on a drug, you will get sick. You will get sometimes violently ill, sometimes even almost die if you don't have that drug, if you don't have access to the drug. And that's one of the dangerous things about opioids, about alcohol, cigarettes, caffeine, all those drugs, heroin, meth, all those drugs create a physical addiction, where when you don't have the drug anymore, when you can't get it anymore, you go through what's called withdrawal. Your body goes through this withdrawal phase, and it is not a pleasant it is not a pleasant experience. Going through withdrawal is a very painful experience. I'm going through withdrawal right now from caffeine. uh, it it sucks a lot. I'm still having headaches and weakness because it's been like a week now, I guess, and I'm still going through withdrawal. One of the things that happens to you when you take drugs to alter your consciousness or to stay awake or whatever is over time, it takes more and more of the drug to achieve the same effect. Right? So your body gets used to the drug. It it activates mechanisms to work against the drug. So you need more drug. And this process where the amount of drug that you need is grows over time is called tolerance. Tolerance. You actually become tolerant to the drug. One of the really neat things about tolerance is that it's a learned behavior. It seems to be learned, and you can break it. But tolerance is causes users to increase the amount of drug. If they don't increase the amount of drug, then they go through withdrawal, which is that horrible, terrible experience. Um, let's see if I can find. Oh, here we go. Well, what's that? Trying to find a nice picture here. So there are a number of different categories for drugs, right? Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. There we go. In general, we have four very broad categories of drugs, right? Four broad categories, and the reason it's arranged like this with one, two on this side and then two on the other side is because they're kind of like opposites of each other. So along the horizontal line, we have stimulants and depressants. Okay, stimulants are those drugs which stimulate you. They give you energy, right? They give you energy. The most common stimulant in our society is, of course, caffeine, right? You drink coffee and caffeinated drinks in order to get that stimulant buzz, and they cause general arousal, wakefulness, right? And of course, the opposite of a stimulant is a depressant. A drug that is a depressant does quite the opposite. It puts you to sleep. It knocks you out. Reduces brain activity. Whereas a stimulant increases brain activity, the depressants reduce brain activity and cause you to either get super mellow or just completely lose consciousness altogether, right? One of those two. Along the top, we have what are called antipsychotic drugs. Antipsychotic drugs. Now, these are primarily used in medical settings. You're not going to find anybody really getting high on antipsychotics. they don't really do that for you. Antipsychotics are used in the treatment of psychoses like schizophrenia. They basically, one of the things they help you do is to relieve the symptoms of schizophrenia. So reduce. So for example, one of the hallmarks of schizophrenia, one of the symptoms of schizophrenia, is hearing voices, right? Hearing voices that aren't there, but they're very, very real to you if you're schizophrenic. And antipsychotic medications will help alleviate and get rid of a lot of those voices so that you can have a more normal life. On the other hand, if you want to hear voices and want to see all kinds of weird, freaky ass shit, then you go down below and take hallucinogens. That's what hallucinogens are. Hallucinogens are drugs that cause somatosensory alterations in experience, right? Alterations in experience. So you get to the point where you have where you're smelling colors and you're seeing sounds, crazy weird shit like that. Um, Now, some of the stimulants. Well, let's start with the depressants, right? So the depressants, probably the most widely used depressant in our culture is alcohol, right? Alcohol, booze, that the active ingredient in beer and wine and spirits. Um, so alcohol is a technically it's the ethanol molecule, ethanol, and it's right here on the list, alcohol. Whoops, that little again. So alcohol is a pretty good depressant. Now, sometimes every now and then, people are surprised that alcohol is counted as a depressant because you drink one or two beers or a glass of wine, and you're like, "Hey, I'm buzzed. I feel good." I'm a little, the buzz is kind of stimulating. I don't feel depressed. I feel elevated. And the reason the initial dose of alcohol makes you feel a little bit stimulated is because the first part of the brain that alcohol shuts down or affects is the top part of your brain, your cortex. That's the part of your brain that controls your decision making abilities, your fine motor skills, and your ability to speak. That's why whenever the cop pulls you over for suspected drunk driving, he gives you a field sobriety test. And the field sobriety test involves you. The one I hate the worst is saying the alphabet backwards. I don't know if any of you have ever had a field sobriety test before. I've had a few. But when they make you say the alphabet backwards, that's tough. But they make you do all kinds of things to assess your motor skills, your speech skills, and your reasoning ability. They ask you what day it is. What did you do today? How old are you? And just stuff like that to see how fast you're responding. Um, and then as you drink more alcohol, lower and lower parts of your brain are shut down. Eventually you shut down your limbic system. If you remember, we talked about the hippocampus and the amygdala. You remember those parts of the brain that were way down below? Those are associated with learning and memory. And of course, if you shut those down, you end up enjoying the wonderful experience of having a blackout, where you wake up the next morning and you don't remember what happened because your hippocampus was shut down, and it didn't record anything for you. If you keep drinking alcohol, you will of course eventually shut down your brainstem. Your brainstem, of course, controls slightly important things like breathing and heart rate. And this is why you see these stories about these poor frat boys that are that die from alcohol poisoning. Every now and then you see a story in the news about that, and I always just it's horribly sad when that happens. But the reason it happened is because this kid just like consumed way too much alcohol, pickled his brain way too fast, and depressed his entire brain, including the brainstem, which controls breathing and heart rate, and so his breathing and heart rate shut down. But other than alcohol, we have barbiturates, which back in the day we called them downers, right? Chloroform and chloral hydrate, which are used as anesthetics to help you go to sleep. Uh, Morphine and heroin are, and opium codeine are depressants. Oxycodone, the addictive synthetic painkillers, and hydrocodone, the other addictive painkiller, and methadone, the other addictive painkiller, and fentanyl, yet another addictive painkiller. All of these are depressants, right? And in general, they have the the um, the characteristic of shutting down your brain, and reducing your cognitive ability, pretty much reducing everything that that the brain does. One of the ways that depressants work is through activating this guy. Let's see if I can find one with ions passing through it. Oh, here we go. Maybe this one. So this ugly looking thing it looks like a big booger, but it is in fact what's called a GABA receptor, GABA, GABA receptor. And so this is the membrane of a neuron, and this right here is the big receptor protein. And basically, whenever something like alcohol binds to this receptor, or a benzodiazepine like Valium, if you've ever taken a Valium before to relax you, whenever any one of those drugs binds to this receptor, what it does is it opens up this ion channel here, and these positively charged ions all flow inside and reduce the activity of the neuron, so it doesn't fire as much as it used to. So GABA receptors, GABA receptors, their job is to shut down the brain. And we can stimulate those with drugs like Valium, like benzodiazepines, or with booze, good old fashioned hooch. Stimulants, let's see, whoops, oh, darn it. Oh, there it is. There we go. Stimulants on the other side. Stimulants do quite the opposite. They stimulate you. They make you feel alive and refreshed. The most popular stimulant in our culture is, of course, caffeine, right here. And the caffeine molecule, whoops. Whoops. So here is, let's see, where is, I think this will work. So here is the caffeine molecule. You can actually buy coffee cups that have this printed on it, which I think is really cute, right? If you ever want to be fancy schmancy, you can get yourself a coffee cup that has a caffeine molecule. I've actually, they sell earrings too of the little caffeine molecule. That's very sexy. So if you ever want to, impress a neuroscientist, you can wear a caffeine molecule. But what caffeine does is, let me go back here. So it's a central nervous stimulant, and basically it's probably the most consumed psychotropic drug. I mean, coffee and tea are pretty much everywhere in all societies. I mean, there aren't very many societies that don't have like coffee and tea. I mean, I think the only one I can think of is like Mormons, right? Mormons don't consume caffeine, right? That's like one of their things, right? They're like the only ones I can think of that don't consume caffeine. Everybody else consumes caffeine. Even when you go to the Middle East and you have those cultures that don't consume alcohol, well, they definitely consume caffeine. Caffeine acts by blocking the action of a neurotransmitter called adenosine. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter that helps you to relax and go to sleep. And of course, caffeine blocks adenosine. So since it blocks adenosine, it's going to help you not go to sleep. Caffeine also stimulates parts of the autonomic nervous system, the peripheral nervous system. So, if you drink a lot of caffeine, one of the things that happens to you is you poop a lot or you pee a lot. Right? Some of you that have been on Starbucks binges may have noticed that, right? That your pipes get cleaned out pretty easily. And that's because of the caffeine is not only stimulating the adenosine or blocking the adenosine receptors in your brain, it's also stimulating activity in your autonomic nervous system. Another very famous stimulant is cocaina, coke, white powder, white snow, white wedding, call it whatever you like, right? It's cocaine, right? Cocaine has been a big problem in the United States for a long time. So back in the 80s, right? Back when I was your age, in 70s and 80s, I guess, the powdered cocaine was the big problem, right? That was when the Cali cartel in Colombia was all big and selling, shipping tons of cocaine to the United States and making a lot of money off of it. Cocaine is highly addictive in all its forms, whether it's a powder or whether it's in the form of crack cocaine, which was the latest scourge that sort of went through communities in the 90s and early 2000s. But it's all the same thing. It's all cocaine. Now, the way cocaine works is kind of interesting. Let me show you real quick. There we go. Let me see if I can find a picture here of how cocaine works. Let me see. Da, 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 da. Let's see. What's this one look like? Yeah, this will do. Let me show you this one real quick. So if you remember, we talked about what happens when one neuron wants to communicate with another neuron, right? So the action potential flows all the way down the axon to the very end. These little bubbles here that are called vesicles, they move forward and they bind to the surface here and they pop and they release their neurotransmitter. And then after the neurotransmitter travels across the gap and binds to the receptor, that receptor changes its shape and it does whatever it's going to do on the other side to start the signal. And then the neurotransmitter, which is they look like little oranges here, the neurotransmitter is released by the receptor and then it's taken back up by the transporter, and then it gets sucked back up into the cell where it came from to be recycled. Okay, this is the circle of life for a neurotransmitter, right? Now, what cocaine does is it blocks the reuptake of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. So the dopamine is released here, travels across the synaptic gap, binds to the receptor, and then it gets released and it can't go back in. Okay, it can't go back in. And I'm out of time, so I'll pick the story up here next Thursday, I guess. So if there's no questions or whatever, I will.
Real quick, last minute question.
Sure.
I know this kind of stuff is going to be on the test, but is it going to be stuff like stimulants, antipsychotics, hallucinogens, or is it going to be stuff like the specific drugs?
Everything in the book is fair game for the test. Everything in the book is fair game for the test.
Well, I'm going to die.
No. Be positive, Blaine. Be positive.
I'm positive I'm going to fail this.
No. Any other questions aside from Blaine's poor
I have a question.
lack of confidence? Yes. Go ahead.
I have a question. So today I'm the new student. I think I emailed you earlier. Do you see my name, Sadaf?
And what is your name? Oh, Sadaf. Yeah, I see
Sadaf.
you. Yeah, you're right here.
Okay. So like I was like for some reason I wasn't able to like have access to the like any assignment or the page. So however I got an email and I fixed my email today. So I saw your videos and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I followed up and I followed that like I watched some of the videos and I will continue watching it. So I want to know if I can get a attendance for watching it after.
Yeah, yeah. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I've got you covered.
Okay, awesome. And how about like study guide for exam? I know we have like coming up soon. So is it like based on like what do you go over in lecture over video or like we should focus on the book?
Yes. The answer is
Okay.
yes.
So
Both.
yes for both?
Both, yes. Yep, it's everything. Yep. Welcome to college. Yeah, it's everything.
Yeah, it's just like it's a first exam, so kind of like I'm nervous about it because I don't know how the exam like you usually test us
You
like
need to get
that.
together. You need to get together, Blaine.
Yeah.
You guys need to like take some drugs to calm you down, you know, and then
And I'm out. College is already a financial drain. Why would I buy that stuff?
Anyway, yeah, it's over everything. So
So
it's chapters 1, 3, and 4.
1, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
And then like when is our meeting time? Is it like every Tuesday, Thursday?
Thursdays at 5:30 to 6:45.
Awesome. Okay.
Everything's in the syllabus. All right, guys. I will see you on Thursday. Have a good week. I'll see you guys later.
Real quick, did you
Yeah,
say the test was on Friday?
Yeah, I'll release it on Friday. Yeah, sometime Friday.
Is it going to be open after Friday?
Yeah, it'll be open for 4 days.
Okay, that'll give me some time. Okay, because Friday I'm going on a road trip.
No, it'll be open for 4 days. It's due on Sunday, I think, Sunday night. Yeah, something like that. So
This Sunday or
the Sunday after I open it. Yeah, it's due.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll get it to you whenever I can, but
Yes,
I'm just not confident about the grade because again I'm not going to have that much time to
You're
study.
gonna do fine. Just work hard.
I'll do my best. I just hope that's enough for you.
That's all we can ask. Hey, see you guys later.
Thank you for your time.
Take care.